evening. I'm Bridget Bargen. Welcome to our continuing election coverage. Let's take a live look at Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's election night headquarters, both in New York City, only about a mile apart from one another, and plenty of people there and across the country who are keeping a very close eye on the results. You can see probably hundreds of people gathered in each of those buildings. We begin tonight in the race for president, and these are the results from the national popular vote, and it is a very tight race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. You can see Trump holding a 49 to 47% edge over Hillary Clinton. Gary Johnson, Jill Stein way out of this one, but this is going to come down to the wire between Trump and Clinton. Specifically, let's look at how Nebraskans voted in the race for president. Donald Trump pretty much declared the winner shortly after the polls closed. He now has 56% of the vote, 12% of precincts reporting here in Nebraska. Hillary Clinton actually going down 39%, Gary Johnson 4%, Jill Stein just 1% of the vote. Of course, the other major item on the ballot is the vote concerning the death penalty. Now, the wording was a little confusing. It was not just a simple yes or no question. And actually, since I just looked at these results coming out here, the repeals have gone down. A repeal means you want to bring the death penalty back. It is inching closer and closer now. 53% want to bring the death penalty back, while just 47% want to keep what the legislature did, which is essentially abolishing the death penalty here in Nebraska. One of the other big items on the ballot today, the SCC bond issue. This would increase property taxes in the 15-county range for SCC, 18% of precincts reporting. And this one, overwhelmingly at this point in time, 61% are for the SCC bond election. That's again $369 million. Well, just 39%, of course, SCC saying they need a qualified workforce. They need to train workers here in Nebraska. We saw both sides coming up to this race having ads trying to convince voters on what to do. And so this one, 18% of precincts reporting 61 to 39%. Moving on to State Board of Education District 1. This includes Lincoln and Lancaster County, between two longtime educators, Patricia Coe-Johns and Stephanie Bulkey-Schulte. And you can see Patricia Coe-Johns about a 10% edge right now over Bulkey-Schulte, 55 to 45% of the vote, 20% of precincts reporting. So this one still has a ways to go yet. Don't forget to download our 1011 News app. Click on the election coverage tab and see all the results. You can also sign up for push notifications to get alerts on all those big races that you care about. Make sure your Facebook notifications for 1011 News are turned on. We've been doing lots of Facebook Lives. And also follow 1011 News on Twitter for a stream of what's happening at local campaign parties. We have lots of people who are out covering all the elections that matter to you. And of course, continue to watch 1011 News for live cut-ins, and we'll have a 10 p.m. newscast coming up in about an hour. That's all the time we have for now. We want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you back here in about 30 minutes. Have a great night. Good evening. I'm Bridget Bargen. Welcome to our continuing election coverage. We've been showing you live looks of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's election night headquarters, both in New York City, about a mile apart. Hundreds of these people at these campaign parties on the East Coast, patiently waiting for the polls to close on the West Coast. Now, let's take a look at some of the races in the state legislature. This is District 21, covers Northwest Lincoln and Northwest Lancaster County. Senator Ken Haar out on term limits, and you can see Mike Hilgers with about a 6% lead over Larry Shearer. Now, this was a particularly heated race in terms of attack ads. Both candidates telling 1011 they weren't happy about those attack ads. Moving on to state legislature District 25. Covers Northeast and Eastern Lancaster County. Senator Kathy Campbell, also term limited. And you can see Suzanne Geist has also about a 6% lead over Jim Gordon. That's about 63% of reporting. So we are inching closer to that point. And moving on to Legislature District 27, Northwest and parts of South Lincoln. Senator Colby Koash out, and it looks like Anna Wishart has a pretty commanding lead over Dick Clark, 74% to 26%. a little over 50% of precincts reporting in this one. As we move to District 29 state legislature, that covers South Lincoln, and Senator Kate Bowles is the incumbent. She serves on the Appropriations Committee, and it appears she's going to keep her seat. She's being declared the winner over challenger Melody Vaccaro, 84% to 16%. Let's take a look at the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners. This serves District 2, and they have a big job. There are a total of 5 commissioners. Larry Hudkins is not running again, and you can see Jennifer Brinkman has about a 10% lead over Jim Ballard. Ballard, the owner of James Arthur Vineyards in Raymond. Brinkman, the current president of the United Way of Lincoln and Lancaster County Foundation. She also was a small business owner at one point. 43% of precincts reporting in this District 2 Lancaster County Commissioner's race. In Grand Island, voters deciding on a half-cent sales tax increase. It will affect anyone who goes and spends money in the city. The question there being asked, 7% of precincts reporting, so very small percent of precincts reporting in Hall County, 58% saying no, while just 42% saying yes. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on this one. Obviously, a long way to go in the Grand Island sales tax increase ballot issue. Taking a look at the SCC bond issue, this would increase property taxes in 15 counties, 22% of precincts reporting, and SCC asking for $369 million to renovate and update their campuses. You can see 64% are against this. A lot of people saying property taxes are one of the big issues as to why people are against it. On a $100,000 home, it would be about $39, but on the average, what the Department of Ag considers an average size medium farm in Nebraska, it would push that, just the increase, over $2,000. So 64% to 36% in this SCC bond election. We will continue to keep you updated. And of course, we are going to have a jam-packed newscast starting at 9:55 p.m. That's 30 minutes away from now. We'll see you back here then. I'm Bridget Farjan. Welcome to our continuing election coverage. Let's take a live look at Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's election night headquarters. Both are in New York City. Clinton has set up at the Javits Center on the west side of Manhattan, while Trump is at the New York Hilton in Midtown. Now, earlier, Hillary Clinton cast her ballot this morning in what has become the most important election in her lifetime. The former senator and Secretary of State, along with her husband, voted at a polling place in their home of Chappaqua, New York. When they arrived at the polling place, they were greeted by dozens of supporters. Meanwhile, her opponent, Republican nominee Donald Trump, arrived at a precinct on Manhattan's east side around 11 o'clock local time, voting alongside the presidential nominee, his wife Melania, and daughter Ivanka. Back here at home, we have all of the major races covered tonight, including perhaps the most debated measure, the death penalty. For more on that, let's go live to David Jesperson in Omaha at the Nebraskans for the Death Penalty gathering. David.
Yeah, good evening, Bridget. This certainly isn't a new debate, is it? We've been debating the death penalty for decades here in Nebraska. Should the state have a means of execution for its worst of the worst criminals? Well, the Nebraskans for Peace say certainly. Not only should we have it, it's a necessity for the state. It's necessary for the county attorneys, it's necessary for law enforcement, and it's necessary for the public safety of everyone in the state. Will voters agree? That's going to be the big question tonight. Now, the Nebraskans for the death penalty say they should, because the death penalty provides a useful tool for public safety and also a huge useful tool for county attorneys to avoid major court trial costs by using the death penalty as a plea bargain. Now, cost has become a big issue, but the Nebraskans for the death penalty say really the death penalty legislation doesn't really cost any more than not having it. So we'll have to see if the voters do decide. We'll send it back to you. For now, live in Omaha, David Jesperson.
All right, thank you, David. And of course, the polls close in about 90 minutes. And of course, there's two sides to every vote. Let's go live to Kristen Bauer in Omaha at the Retain a Just Nebraska watch party. Kristen.
Yeah, Bridget, like you said, the death penalty is one of the biggest issues for Nebraska voters this year. To give you a little background on why this issue has been in the forefront for the last several months, you may remember last year the legislature voted to repeal the death penalty, and after some back and forth with Governor Ricketts, the issue has been put on hold until today. Retain Adjust Nebraska has been working months to uphold the legislature's decision. They're actually against the death penalty for many reasons. The group believes capital punishment does not prevent crime. They fear the possibility of sending an innocent person to death, and they believe it's more costly than life without parole. That notion was actually supported by a report from a Nebraska economist who says the death penalty would cost Nebraska millions of dollars if reinstated. Those on the other side of the issue disagree, saying those numbers are skewed. But either way, Bridget, ultimately it's up to the voters to decide the fate of the death penalty in Nebraska, and everyone here will be eager to hear what voters decide. Stay tuned for those results. For now, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Kristen. Of course, those first results come in at 8 o'clock. Don't forget to download our 1011 News app and click on the election coverage tab to see all those results. You can also sign up for push notifications, get alerts for the big races. Make sure your Facebook notifications for 1011 News are turned on. Also, follow 1011 News on Twitter for a stream of what's happening at those local campaign parties. And of course, watch 1011 News for live cut-ins throughout the night and a very packed 10 p.m. show. That's all the time we have for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you right back here in 30 minutes. Good evening and welcome to our election night coverage on 1011 News at 10. I'm Bridget Farjan.
Hi everyone, I'm Owen Jensen. Hi Bridget. After months of build-up, Decision 2016 has finally arrived. Tonight we're positioned to bring you the coverage of the big races, have live reaction, and provide expert analysis on everything from the presidential election, the SCC bond, and of course the death penalty.
We'll have live reports from David Jesperson at Nebraskans for the death penalty at the Omaha Marriott.
As well as Kristen Bauer, who is at the Retain Adjust Nebraska anti-death penalty election gathering, and Courtney Johns is here with reaction to the SCC bond measure.
We also have crews in Lincoln covering all of the local races. Our Max Massey is with the Lancaster County Democrats at the Single Barrel.
And Megan McGill is at Shea Hay, where the Lancaster County GOP has gathered to watch this evening's events.
Now, we've been monitoring and showing you live looks of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's election night headquarters. These are both happening right now live in New York City.
Yeah, Clinton has set up at the Javits Center on the west side of Manhattan, while Trump is at the New York Hilton Midtown. Of course, this is the biggest race by far that everybody is keeping a very close eye on, including us.
And we begin tonight in the race for president. These are the results from the national popular vote. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Gary Johnson, and Jill Stein running in this race, and it is a very tight race for you right now.
Unbelievable. Look at the numbers. 49% Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton at 46%, separated by about 3 million or so votes there. Gary Johnson and Jill Stein don't have a chance. They're way behind. Now, specifically, this is interesting. Here's how Nebraskans voted, and of course Nebraska has been called for Trump, but there are the numbers there with 38% of precincts reporting. Again, AP called this race. Donald Trump with 56% of the votes, Hillary Clinton at 38%, separated by what, almost 60 or so thousand votes right there.
And of course this race could come down to the wire and how the votes are split among the Electoral College. Here is the breakdown right now. We are getting our results from the Associated Press. Donald Trump has 197 in the Electoral College votes compared to Hillary Clinton's 131. Of course, you need 270 votes to win the presidency. Now, you need to know that Nebraska, one of 2 states to split their electoral votes along with Maine. Of course, that happened in 2008, and that second congressional district went to President Obama. And this one, we have not decided yet how Nebraska's Electoral College votes are going.
Well, who would have thought this at this time of the night, right? Well, of course, the other major item on the ballot, the vote concerning the death penalty. The question, as worded on the ballot. Now, you had to read this one very carefully because it could be a little confusing. It wasn't a simple yes, do you want it, or no, don't you question. But basically, all right, here's how it goes. If you voted to retain, that means you want to get rid of the death penalty by retaining what the legislature passed. And a vote to repeal will keep the death penalty by repealing the bill the legislature passed. Get it? Got it? There it is right there. Retain at 236,000, repeal 197, as 55 to 45% with 38% of precincts reporting.
Well, some reaction for tonight's vote. Let's go live to David Jesperson in Omaha at Nebraskans for the Death Penalty campaign party. Hi, David.
Yeah, good evening, Bridget and Owen. It does appear that the voters have spoken, and they are going against what their elected officials did in 2015, and they are bringing back the death penalty. Here to talk to us more about that is co-founder of Nebraskans for the Death Penalty, Bob Evnen. What are your initial reactions to the vote right now?
Well, David, we felt that a majority of Nebraskans supported the death penalty. That's why we started this petition process to put this on the ballot so that Nebraskans would have an opportunity to vote on it. And it appears that with the results that are being counted now that indeed it is correct that a majority of Nebraskans, a substantial majority of Nebraskans, support the death penalty and want to keep it on the books.
Is it interesting to you that they would go against their elected officials? What do you think that says about the need to have some of these major issues out to the voters?
It was more interesting to me that the elected officials went against the will of the people. We have a constitutional right in our state to have a referendum when citizens want to petition for a direct election over an issue that the legislature's decided. We don't do it very often, but every once in a while we have the petition process available to us under our Constitution. We use it. We did that in this case, and hopefully the unicameral now will heed the voice of the voters of the state.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing moving forward. Bob, thank you so much. That is going to be the next step, is how do we get a method of execution now that the voters have voted back in the death penalty. Live in Omaha, I'm David Jesperson.
All right, David, thank you very much. One of the other big items on the ballot today, the SEC bond issue, very controversial. This would increase property taxes in 15 counties. SEC asking for $369 million. They want to renovate and update their campuses, saying it's critical. But those against say no way. Property taxes would go up, and it would just cost too much. Well, you can see where it stands tonight. A lot of people against the SEC bond proposal. 68,872 saying no way, we don't want it. For it, 38,022. So 64% to 36%, with 25% of precincts reporting. Moving on to some of the races in the state legislature, and Mike Hilgers, a close one there. That's in northwestern Lancaster County. Mike Hilgers at 4316, so 53% of the vote. Larry Shearer, 3806. And that's, well, that's about 500 separating, but they haven't called that yet.
Moving on to District 25, that covers northeast and eastern Lancaster County. You can see Suzanne Geist has a 6% lead over Jim Gordon, with 63% of precincts reporting. Gordon, a Vietnam veteran, Geist, a UNL grad, small business owner, and we caught up with Suzanne Geist a little while ago.
I'm probably different than many other potential senators in that I'm not walking in my first session with a specific priority bill. I have some priorities in mind that I would like to focus on.
And that was Suzanne Geist talking. Moving on to state legislature District 27, Northwest and parts of South Lincoln. You can see Anna Wishart has been declared the winner. 55% of precincts reporting, 74% of the vote Wishart got over Dick Clark with just 26%. Wishart served on the Lincoln Airport Authority for 4 years.
Moving on to State Legislative District 29, covering South Lincoln, Senator Kate Bowles. She's the incumbent. She serves on the Appropriations Committee, and it appears she'll keep her seat. Well, more than appears. She's been, there's the check mark right against her name, 91-93, 84% of the votes she got. Melody Vaccaro, just 1,785 votes. So a huge margin of victory right there.
State Board of Education District 1, which includes Lincoln and Lancaster County. And this one's still a little too close to call yet. Patricia Coe-Johns holds a little under 10% lead over Stephanie Bolke-Schulte, 22% of precincts reporting. These two both longtime educators.
Well, back to the death penalty now. We just heard, well, right now we're going to go live to Kristen Bauer. She's in Omaha at the Retain Adjust Nebraska gathering. Kristen?
Yeah, guys, for those on both sides of the issue, this race has been a nail-biter. Early on, it looked like Retain was far behind, but they did catch up. However, it looks like the outcome wasn't in their favor. Senator Colby Coash took to the podium less than 1 hour ago saying it looks like a loss. He says for supporters, their effort wasn't in vain and it was an important conversation to have. He says the results show him hearts and minds are changing in Nebraska and this conversation isn't over. I also spoke with Dan Parsons with Retain Adjust Nebraska earlier tonight. Here's a little of what he had to say about what's ahead.
But there have been many people in Nebraska for many years who have said that the death penalty is not needed in Nebraska. If for some reason Nebraska voters disagree and vote to bring back the death penalty, there will still be an education effort to continue to educate Nebraskans that the death penalty is on its way out.
And Senator Colby Koash also says tonight's vote shows him that support for the death penalty is on the decline. He says he hopes the discussion will be back on the dinner tables of families across the state of Nebraska. For now, I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Kristen Bauer reporting tonight. Thank you, Kristen. And we are joined now by Dr. Douglas Pierce, a visiting assistant professor at Nebraska Wesleyan University, who specializes in social media, voting behavior, and turnout.
Yeah, first question for you, I got to get right to it. So what happened, Professor? Did the pollsters need to go back to the drawing board? Because we've been watching the results come in, and something sure looks amiss there, at least what the pollsters were saying.
Yeah, we made some mistakes. A lot of the early projections were very confident that Hillary Clinton would win the presidency. I'm not saying that that's not a possibility at this point, but the race has certainly changed from what we expected it to be.
Was there one big surprise that jumps out at you tonight so far? Again, nothing's called. I'm talking about the presidential race here. Something that that just sticks out.
I think we didn't accurately measure how many Trump supporters are out there, and I think that really raises questions about how faithfully people report their preferences to pollsters, especially in elections like this, which seems certainly monumental, and this has been a very irregular election.
Because there was some talk that there was the Trump supporters who didn't really want to say they were Trump supporters. When pollsters called on the phone, they were maybe they didn't want to admit it, or they didn't feel like saying it. There was this sort of segment of the population that just wanted to keep to themselves. Do you buy that?
I do, because people respond to what's out there in the media, and they respond to how their friends are acting and what people are saying. And we saw Trump didn't get many major endorsements from newspapers. There's a lot of the national media talking about how dangerous he is, and that that could affect people. Maybe not change their mind and make them vote against him, but make them less likely to say that they support him.
And what did Donald Trump, or where did Donald Trump do well, and maybe where did Hillary Clinton fall short? Is that phrased correctly?
Sure. I mean, it's surprising in some ways, because Trump he's getting more votes than we expected. He's getting votes across different demographics. I saw one report saying that he was doing well with, obviously middle-aged whites, whites without college educations, and they were turning out in numbers higher than expected.
Okay.
One of the interesting things, everyone knows, first of all, we'll go back to our civics lessons from 6th grade, right? You need 270 to get to the prize job. If there is one, in Omaha, I don't know if they've called that yet. Nebraska splits its electoral votes. So like we saw in 2008 when Obama got one. Is that a surprise for you tonight? That maybe we don't know what's happening there yet. I mean, it seems like that may have been a certain vote for Clinton, but we don't know.
Right, we don't know at this moment. I don't think that would be a decisive vote, obviously, but it could speak to, again, just larger problems of prediction that we seem to be having in this election.
Right.
Okay. Well, Dr. Douglas Pierce, we appreciate you joining us this evening. Thank you so much. We're going to take one last look at that death penalty. And these numbers, despite what we showed you right before we went to David Jesperson Live, these are correct. This is why Senator Colby Koash with Retain and Just Nebraska conceded. You heard Kristen say that. The 58% of Nebraskans have voted to repeal what the legislature passed. So that means they want to bring back the death penalty here in Nebraska, as opposed to just 42% who want to keep what the legislature did. So Nebraska voters making a big statement tonight.
Yeah, that's some people thought that was kind of confusing, Professor, but I get it now, right?
Yeah, I think the earlier results were confusing to me, because the death penalty does have popular support.
Right,
so,
for sure.
So that result seems to make more sense to me.
We clarified it right there. Sometimes on live TV things, you get a couple wrong numbers, but we got it right there. Thank you, Professor.
Well, we have plenty more to come on this election night special, but first, Ken's in with your forecast.
Be right back.
Welcome back to our election night coverage. Besides the headliners, there are plenty of other races to keep an eye on in our area.
That's right. Let's get right to the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners. For Lancaster County Commissioner District 2, seeking that seat, Jim Ballard, owner of James Arthur Vineyards in Raymond. Jennifer Brinkman, the president of the United Way of Lincoln, who was a small business owner, and there's the numbers right now. Looks like Brinkman well out in front with 1,000 votes, ahead by 1,000 votes ahead of Jim Ballard with 43% of precincts reporting. That's for District 2 Lancaster County Commissioner.
Moving on to the Grand Island sales tax increase. This was to add a half-cent sales tax in Grand Island. Of course, though, it would affect anyone who comes and visits Grand Island. 44% of precincts reporting, and people overwhelmingly saying no to that half-cent sales tax increase. 59% to just 41% who want it. In the race for Hastings mayor, we just got the first results for this race, and here's why. The Adams County Election Commissioner says they had a problem with the machine that was supposed to count the votes. They had to bring in a technician who just fixed the machine around 9:30 p.m. And you can see that Corey Studi holds about a 300 vote lead over Kathy Peterson Duval, 60 to 40%. But look at the number of precincts reporting, just 3%. Wow. So this is very early on in that race.
Right. Well, the NU Board of Regents District 6 covering 21 counties across parts of central Nebraska, and Paul Kenny out with a substantial lead, 25,233, 57% of the vote, with 25% of precincts reporting. Marcia Fangmeyer getting 18,668, 43% of the vote in that race. We'll stick around. When we come back, we'll check in live with one of the local election parties. That's right after the break. Welcome back, everybody. We're continuing our election night coverage with a $369 million bond that would have ended up costing homeowners more money in property taxes.
The bond was for Southeast Community College and would impact 15 Nebraska counties. And with an update on the results and what this means for those counties, we bring in 1011's Courtney Johns. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, Bridget. Thanks so much. Well, the ballots are still coming in, but at this point, we are calling it a no-go for the SCC bond. This $369 million bond would have covered a majority of SCC's $508 million project paying for renovations and satellite campuses. The Vote No 369 coalition has been campaigning hard against this bond, and I spoke with one of their representatives, Ansley Mick. She told me this bond goes beyond the 15 counties that could have been taxed. She says this is a statewide issue.
We just heard that housing prices in Lincoln are going to go up again next year. Commercial businesses are struggling a little bit. Nothing is moving and growing, and higher taxes aren't the answer.
So Bridget and Owen, essentially Mick says this is about money, and this shows Nebraskans are tired of paying for higher property taxes. So let's take a look at the numbers. If this would have passed, a majority of homeowners would have paid around $60 a year in property taxes in Lincoln. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, Mick says that money can add up year after year. And that cost gets pretty pricey for farmers. So now take a look at what the state of Department of Ag considers an average size farm. If that would have passed, farmers would have had to pay at least $2,000 more annually in taxes. So we also spoke with a campaign coordinator for SCC who told us that the school's Board of Governors is very responsive to voter feedback. And if that bond didn't pass, which it likely won't, they'd go back to the drawing board to see what voters didn't like and make adjustments so they can fund future projects.
All right, well explained. Thank you very much, Courtney. Stick around. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to this 1011 News Election Night Special. We want to show you again the final results for the death penalty.
Yeah, we want to explain to you what happened with the results from earlier in the newscast. You can see these are the final results. Earlier, we got our results from the Associated Press. They were wrong. They were fed to us wrong. These are correct. The death penalty abolishment is being repealed. These are correct. So just so you are clear to everyone who's seeing this at home.
And finally, we're going to have a little fun here. We want to show you a live shot in the newsroom for, Bridget and myself. We've got a lot of people working behind the scenes as well. Look at that. We got Stephanie and some other folks in there. They've been working hard all night long, so we want to really, and the newsroom there, the production room, we want to give a shout out to everybody in there. Hi, guys. Thanks for working hard. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a great night.